Ever get that that feeling that natural and normal are maybe not quite the same thing, even though they sound similar?
Yeah, lots of people do. They seem close, but they're definitely distinct.
So today, we're going to sort of crack these two words open. Look at what really makes them different.
Exactly. The goal is to help you get a much sharper sense pretty quickly of when you should use one versus the other.
And we've got some solid sources for this deep dive, right?
You do. We're looking at linguistic breakdowns, the core concepts behind them, how other languages handle this stuff, and some practical tips, too.
Think of it as a shortcut to getting this right.
Pretty much. Avoid those little moments of uncertainty.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The real basic difference. What is natural?
Well, natural fundamentally is about things that come from nature. Things that happen, without humans stepping in.
Untouched, inherent.
Yeah, intrinsic, essential. Like how a plant grows on its own. That's natural.
Got it. Like a bird building a nest. That's a natural instinct.
Precise.
So then, where does normal come into play? How's that different?
Normal lives in a different space. It's about fitting a standard or being average or matching what most people do or expect in a group.
So it's tied to social rules or statistics.
Exactly. It's about norms. Like what's typical behavior in an office setting? That's about being normal for that context.
That makes sense. I remember reading a great example that really nailed this difference. Something about kids in school.
Oh, right. The idea that it's natural for kids to sit still for 8 hours.
Yeah, that one.
That statement really highlights the confusion because, a child's impulse, their biological tendency is often to move around, to be active. That's more natural for them.
Right. Sitting still for that long is something the school environment expects.
Exactly. It's a social requirement, a norm in that specific place. It might even go against their natural inclination.
So sitting still for hours isn't really natural, biologically speaking, even if it's considered normal within the school rules.
You've got it. That example really clarifies the core distinction, I think.
It does. Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper. What about the words themselves, their origins? Does etymology help here?
Oh, absolutely. It often does. Natural traces back to the Latin natura.
Natura.
It means birth, nature, the inherent quality of something. So its very root points to origin, to something fundamental.
Okay, that tracks. And normal.
Also Latin, it comes from norma.
Norma.
Yeah, which was originally a carpenter's square, a tool used to make sure angles were right, that things fit a pattern or a rule.
A standard?
Exactly. So you can see how that evolved to mean conforming to a standard, a rule, a pattern. It's about measurement against something else.
So natural is like the essence, what it is inherently. And normal is more the how it fits or how it usually is compared to some kind of benchmark.
That's a great way to put it. One's about being, the other's about fitting in a way.
Linguistically, how would you phrase that?
Right. We could say natural deals with ontology, the study of being, what something is, while normal is, normative, related to norms and often statistical, about what's typical or average.
Understanding that helps avoid mixing them up.
Definitely.
You mentioned an example earlier about a tree's shape being described incorrectly. How does this history help us understand why normal might be the wrong word there?
Right. The example was something like, that tree's shape isn't normal. Yeah. Well, if normal comes from norma, the rule or pattern, you see, it doesn't really apply to how a tree grows freely. Trees don't follow human set rules for shape.
So you wouldn't say it's not normal, you'd say it's nice.
Maybe unusual or atypical compared to others, especially if it's, say, in a park where other trees are pruned. But normal just doesn't fit well.
And natural would apply
if you were talking about its growth happening without interference, following its own biological path. That growth process is natural.
It's amazing how just looking at the roots clarifies so much. What about other languages? Do they generally keep these ideas separate too?
They often do, yeah. We looked at a few examples: French, Spanish, German, Russian, Japanese, Arabic.
And they all have distinct words.
Generally, yes. Like French has naturel and normal, Spanish the same, German natürlich and normal, Russian has jestestveni for natural and normoni for normal, Japanese uses shizenna versus futsunno, Arabic iabi versus adi.
So it's not just an English quirk. This distinction seems quite common.
It does suggest the concepts themselves are distinct across cultures, but it doesn't completely stop confusion, especially when translating or learning a language.
How so? You mentioned cross-linguistic interference.
Yeah. Take that example of a Spanish speaker maybe saying, it's not natural to go to work every day.
Okay.
Now, Spanish has both words, natural and normal, but the subtle ways they're used, the connotations, might differ slightly from English. In English, we'd usually say going to work daily is normal. It's a social convention, a typical routine.
Right, not natural like breathing.
Exactly. So the speaker might be sort of carrying over a slightly different feel of the Spanish natural into English, where normal would be the more standard choice for that idea.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's not just word-for-word translation.
Yeah.
It's about the underlying concept in each language.
Precisely.
So coming back to English then, could we just swap them? Is natural interchangeable with normal? The short answer seems to be no.
Definitely no. Not generally. Using one where the other fits better usually leads to, well, inaccuracy or confusion.
But are there any cases where they sort of overlap acceptably?
There are a few, yeah. Usually in more, let's say, figurative ways or common expressions.
Like what? Can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about saying, it's natural to feel nervous before public speaking.
Okay.
You could also reasonably say, it's normal to feel nervous before public speaking.
Ah, I see. Why do both work there?
Well, natural points to it being a common human sort of internal feeling, an almost instinctive reaction for many. And normal works because it reflects the shared social understanding. It's typical, statistically common, lots of people experience it. So both words kind of touch on related aspects of that feeling.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a subtle overlap.
It is, but then there are cases where using normal can be, well, problematic, like that example about someone liking solitude.
Right. The statement, he's not normal because he prefers solitude. What's the issue there?
The issue is that normal easily slips into being judgmental. Calling a preference not normal implies there's a right way to be, the standard way, and this person deviates. It can stigmatize.
Whereas saying not natural would be?
Even stranger, really. It implies their preference goes against fundamental human nature, which is a huge claim and probably wrong. It just doesn't fit. Normal here is more about social typicality, but used judgmentally.
That really underlines how careful we need to be, especially with normal.
Absolutely.
So how do we navigate this? How do we pick the right word day to day? Any practical guidelines?
The absolute core question is, am I talking about essence, or am I talking about social expectation or average?
Essence versus convention average.
Exactly. If it's biological, instinctive, something that happens on its own, lean towards natural.
Okay.
If it's about what's typical in a culture, what's statistically common, what follows a social rule or standard normal is usually your word.
You also had a kind of test, right? Something about external influence.
Yeah, it's a useful check. Ask yourself, would this happen without external manipulation or rules? If yes, it points towards natural. If it's about conforming to a rule, fitting a pattern, being measured against a standard that signals normal.
And always watch out for that implied judgment with normal.
Yes, definitely. Be mindful that it can sound like you're saying something should be a certain way or that deviating is bad, especially with personal choices. Unless you purely mean statistically average, tread carefully.
Good reminder. And when translating?
Just be extra cautious. As we saw, even with equivalent words, the nuances and common usage can differ quite a bit. Double check the concept.
Context is key too, isn't it? You had those medical examples.
Right, context is crucial, like natural childbirth. That specifically means birth without medical interventions, focusing on the body's inherent process.
Versus normal childbirth.
Which usually means a birth that proceeds within expected medical guidelines, hitting certain milestones. It's judged against a medical norm.
Okay. And anxiety.
Similar distinction. Normal anxiety might refer to a level of anxiety considered typical or expected in a specific situation, but natural anxiety would point to the fundamental human capacity to feel anxiety as an emotion.
It really does come back to that essence versus standard idea.
It does. And maybe quickly revisiting that summary table helps lock it in.
Good idea. So natural. Root concept is essence. From natural birth, ontological frame, think biology, errors accusing it with typical.
And normal. Root concept is convention average, from norma, rule. Normative as statistical frame, think sociology, error is applying it to inherent traits or using it judgmentally.
Seeing it laid out like that is very clear. But if it's that clear when we break it down, why is it so common to mix them up? Where does the confusion really stem from?
Well, part of it is that both words do relate to a sense of expected. Natural implies expected based on inherent properties. And normal implies expected based on a rule or average. Our brains, like shortcuts, it's easy to just lump those different kinds of expected together.
The cognitive shortcut that trips us up.
Sort of, yeah. And there are other things feeding into it, too.
Like what?
Well, both words have multiple meanings. That's called polysemy. And we use them metaphorically. We talk about laws of nature, right?
They're scientific laws.
But sometimes people might use similar phrasing, maybe loosely, for social conventions, blurring that line between inherent rules and social rules.
Okay. And you mentioned a fallacy, naturalistic fallacy.
Right. That's the philosophical idea, a mistaken one, that if something is natural, it must therefore be good or right.
Doesn't automatically mean ought?
Exactly. But that tendency to link natural with good can kind of spill over. It might subtly make us view what's common, what's normal, as also being inherently right or better, further muddling the two words.
And there's a bias involved too?
Yes. The default as norm bias.
Yeah.
We tend to see what's common around us, the statistical norm, as being the natural way things are.
And anything uncommon seems
Potentially unnatural, even if it's just a less frequent but perfectly natural variation.
Plus, the words themselves look and sound a bit alike.
They do, both from Latin, those nat-nor beginnings, and they pop up in similar conversations about health, society, behavior. All that reinforces a feeling that maybe they're interchangeable, even when they're not.
Okay, so it's a mix of overlapping basic meanings, mental shortcuts, philosophical baggage, cognitive biases, and even just how the words look and sound. No wonder it's pervasive.
It's a potent mix.
So, given all that, what's a really practical, maybe even concise way we can try to minimize this confusion in our own communication? You outlined a kind of plan.
Yeah, the idea is to make the distinction more automatic, less effortful over time. It involves a few steps.
Okay, walk us through it.
Step 1. Create a simple distinction card, like a mental flashcard, or even a real one. 2 sides.
Side 1.
Natural. Key question. Is it about inherent essence? Maybe jot down a quick misuse example, like the kid sitting still.
Okay, side 2.
Normal. Key question. Is it about social convention or statistical average? And again, a misuse example, maybe the solitude one. Keep it visual, simple.
Got it. Step 2.
Integrate that card or just the core idea into places you reference for writing. Your personal style guide, maybe a team wiki, a template, point of need reminder.
Makes sense. Step 3.
Set up just-in-time checks.
Yeah.
This is a bit more techie, maybe. Custom autocorrect rules in Word or Google Docs that flag potential misuses, maybe.
Oh, interesting.
Or if you work with code or publishing tools, maybe linters could have custom rules. The idea is a little nudge right when you're writing.
And the last step, step 4.
Just a quick team huddle. If you work with others, take literally 2 minutes. Share the distinction card idea, explain the core questions, maybe ask everyone for their own examples of misuse they've seen. Creates shared awareness.
That sounds really doable. A quick reference checklist, too, for when you're actually writing.
Yeah, just a few mental prompts. First, pause and ask, essence or convention average? That's the big one.
Okay.
Second, if essence, lean natural. If convention average, lean normal. Third, before sending, do a quick scan. If you're talking data, averages, social practices, is normal used correctly. If you're talking biology, instinct is natural used correctly. Watch for mismatches.
Good red flags.
And fourth, when in doubt, just rephrase. Avoid the word altogether if you're unsure. Clarity is key.
And the goal is that core question becomes almost automatic now.
Exactly. Over time, you internalize it, and you don't need the checklist as much.
This has been incredibly clarifying. I feel like I have a much better handle on this now. The big takeaway really is that difference. Natural for the essence, normal for the typical or the standard.
That's the heart of it. And hopefully these strategies help make that distinction clearer in practice for everyone listening.
Definitely. Being more precise really can sharpen communication.
For sure.
And maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Start noticing how often you hear natural and normal used as if they mean the same thing in daily life, in conversations, online, everywhere. What might that casual swapping tell us about underlying assumptions? Could being more careful with these words actually help us question what we assume is fundamental versus what's just common? Something to think about.